As the petrochemical industry strike enters its second week, we ask when the end is likely to happen. How much damage could this strike deliver to the economy? The negotiation between the union and employers, those are still deadlocked. They're looking at a one-year deal with the employer offering 7%, the union wants 9%. Should petroleum be declared an essential service? Well, the South African Petroleum Industry Association Executive Director Avhapfani Tshifularo joins me now for more. Let's talk firstly about the strike, but I'd also like to talk about some bigger issues. I've had a good experience in people say, oh, you can't get petrol. I've filled up whenever I've wanted to, wherever I've wanted to. But I heard anecdotally that quite a lot of people had to go to 3 or 4 stations. So there is some kind of shortage, but it doesn't seem to be crippling the province or anywhere else.
It all depends on where you live and the number of service stations that are in your area. So from the beginning of the strike, we realized that Pretoria was the worst affected area. Particularly that the depot or complex in the Watlu area was not accessible to the oil companies. But the moment we cleared that area, of course in conjunction with the law enforcement agencies, it became much easier for us to access that depot complex. So we started to improve the delivery of fuels to service stations that are serviced by those depots. But the Joburg area, and it was much better compared to Pretoria. Hence, you could hear a lot of people talking about like their trips to the service station where they could not find fuel, but later on they could find fuel.
So could you put a percentage on the number of stations affected, the amount by which the normal level of petrol available was reduced by 5 or 10%? In Gauteng?
Yeah, we don't really keep data around that, but I heard people who are closely monitoring this, the organization that represent the service station, FRA, Fuel Retailers Association, talking about a figure of 10%. So, but from our perspective, we're monitoring closely the movement of products from the refineries to the depots or terminals, and also from terminals to service stations.
Well, it sounds like you're managing it, and you yourself are not involved in the negotiations, but it does seem like you'll manage through it. Let's talk more broadly about the industry, and tell us firstly about your organization, who contributes to it, how it's made up.
It is a voluntary organization. It's a trade association. It's called the South African Petroleum Industry Association, in short, SAPIA. We are funded by the individual member companies. So the oil companies themselves, they contribute towards the running of the organization. So we have got a board that set the policy agenda for the organization. And we have got a secretariat which comprises of 7 people. And we've got several committees that are contributing to the agenda of the association. That's where we get to debate and discuss issues and get mandate from.
Do you operate as a lobby group? Do you speak on behalf of the industry to government, for example?
Yes, we do represent the industry on issues of common interest. Typically, the issues of common interest are those that are regulated by law, environmental issues, BEE, like health and safety issues or standards. Those are the typical issues that falls under the issues of common interest. You
mentioned BEE. Now, transformation is said to be a big issue in the industry. What's the problem there, and how close are you to solving it?
The petroleum industry is quite unique because various activities of the industry are regulated by law in terms of Petroleum Products Act. You can't just set up a refinery without a license from government. Similarly, the wholesale and retail license, it requires you to meet the criteria that are set as far as transformation is concerned. So the transformation is directly linked to the licensing requirements. So there is a real chance that if you are not making progress, your license could be under threat.
In other words, as one of the big operators?
Correct.
Big petrol companies?
Correct. So we are one of basically we are the first industry in South Africa to enter into a voluntary charter. That was back in 2000. And since then, there's been several charters that has been entered into. However, the expectation is that as the leader in the transformation, we should be setting a bar much higher than what it is. But we've got issues that are beyond our control. Because the petroleum industry is highly dependent on the imported crude oil. It means there are certain things that we cannot influence as far as the petroleum industry is concerned when it comes to the procurement of the petroleum products, in particular crude oil.
Is that another way of saying that our economy through the fuel industry is actually dominated, owned by foreigners, the big foreign companies? I mean, all we've got is Sasol, really, haven't we? And the rest are foreign, BP, Total, and so on.
Well, one can argue that Sasol itself is a multinational company because they don't only operate in South Africa. They've got operations in various parts, of the world. For instance, they've got, a gas-to-liquid operation in Qatar. So this is an industry that's dominated by multinationals, basically. Of course, within CEPPWAWU, we've got the national oil company, Petroleum, as a member. But also Petroleum, the national oil company, has got operation in other parts of the world. So typically, a well-developed petroleum industry in any country, it will be dominated by international oil companies. It's not different from South Africa.
Yeah.
So, but that, it comes with its own benefits, because it means the standards that are set by the industry are typically global standards. You will always be far ahead as far as the locally environment is concerned. Whether you're talking about environmental compliance or health and safety specifications, because it will tend to be driven by your parents in other parts of the world.
So in that sense, it's a world-class industry and South Africa benefits. What about competition? The price is regulated. You're not allowed to retrench people. In other countries, you fill up your own car. Though the petrol pump attendant is a protected species in South Africa. How does your organization look at bringing costs down? You are not allowed to have self-service at service stations. However, though, the oil companies, one of the issues that they look at, is to contain cost. You can only compete in a regulated industry if your cost is much lower than the average. That's when you can see that you are doing very well. Because the way the government regulates the petroleum industry, they look at the average cost of the industry, and that becomes the benchmark. But if your cost as an individual player is above the average, you end up losing, because then you will be under recovering. Yeah.
But petrol price is the one that is regulated only at the pump. Government does not regulate the wholesale price of petrol. So diesel is not regulated at all. If you drive a diesel vehicle, you've got an opportunity to shop around, because it's not unusual to find two competing brands which are like an opposite
But why
street.
shouldn't we have the same for petrol?
Well, I think it's more a policy decision. I think traditionally government approached diesel in a different manner, because it's more like a primary product which is required for primary production. So they give the players there the opportunity to negotiate for a better price. But yes, it's really up to government. If government wants to regulate diesel, it can be done.
So is it a competitive industry, given the things that you've said?
There's a lot of competition. If you look at the number of adverts that are going around from competing brands, promoting their own products.
Sometimes I think it's more the bread that they sell in the shops than the actual petrol. Because, I don't go to a particular brand. I go when I see I need petrol, I just turn the next service station. It all works.
Yeah. I think that's a thing. The margins are very small in the petroleum industry. Because if you think about it, you are paying probably 12 rand a litre of petrol. Your oil company is making less than 50 cents in terms of wholesale margin out of that 12 rand. And it makes a lot of sense that convenience stores are going to play a critical role because I mean, I'll make more money selling water at a service station compared to like selling fuel.
Yeah.
So it just make, I mean, common sense. Actually, in other markets, like if I give an example of France, where the supermarkets are dominating the industry, you'll find that, I mean, the margins that they are earning are so small, so tiny compared to everything else that's been sold there at the forecourt.
Yep. Just looking at another issue you have to deal with, Volkswagen got big fines because of the emissions. Fuel is the clean fuel is a big issue here. How are we doing on that?
We are not really progressing as we would like to see. We were supposed to move to the next, I mean, specification in July 2017. That date has now been typically been withdrawn. The reason is that, I mean, the government has not decided on how they're going to assist the fuel industry as far as upgrading of their plants. And yes, fuel is very critical to advancing the vehicle technology, because for certain models to be introduced, you need enabling fuel to be able to do that. Emissions, I mean, it's a very good, I mean, point in case, because with the right fuel, you can also reduce the emissions from certain vehicles, especially the modern vehicles. So hence you'll hear some other people arguing, especially in the motor sector, to say it does not make sense to introduce carbon tax on new vehicles when you don't have an enabling fuel. To a large extent, it makes a lot of sense that, I mean, fuel technology and vehicle technology shouldn't move hand in hand.
Sure. That's where we'll have to end it. Thanks to my guest, Avhapfani Tshifularo, who is Executive Director for the South African Petroleum Industry Association. Until the next time, keep moving.